Hello everyone, I've been using my OLED for about 13,500 hours, a lot of it streaming speedruns on Twitch, and general content consumption and gaming. Do I have burn-in? How exactly did I use it? We'll get right into it. First of all, do I have burn-in? And the short answer is yes. But there's a lot more to it. So I've used the 42-inch LG C2, as you can see, for about 13,600 hours in a time frame of about 3 years and 5 months. Going into the service panel, you can see that I have 1,420 regular compensation cycles ran, which equates to about 1 every 9.6 hours. It's supposed to run 1 every 4 hours, but because I don't shut down my TV very often, this is what it came to. Now, the longer compensation cycle, the one that runs every 500 hours, I have 29 of them ran. It should be at 27, so I must have ran it a couple extra times during the time I've owned it. So some of you might be thinking because I use it for streaming, I must have just played games on it. But no, I use this as my only display, and I played games in windowed mode while streaming, with a lot of static elements on screen for long periods of time. But we'll get to that. Running an OLED burn-in test, and I apologize for the constant focusing. I don't have a very good camera. There is absolutely no burn-in on any of the color tests. On the grayscale tests, this is where it gets interesting. You can see a thin horizontal line right around here, and I know exactly where it comes from. You'll see it become more prominent at more darker grayscales. The rest of the screen is completely free of burn-in. Around the top you might see some artifacting, but that's a combination of the reflections and the camera mixed with some dirty screen effects. At 85%, you can see the burnt-in horizontal line the most clearly. At 95%, you'll see the dirty screen effect. It's actually a lot better than it used to be when I first bought the TV. And zooming into the burnt-in part at 85% grayscale, you can see how it looks. To be clear, this is not visible at all during regular usage, even when you looked for it. In fact, before I did this test, I was under the impression that there was no burn-in whatsoever, because I don't regularly check the TV for burn-in from time to time. So, how did I use this OLED exactly? Apart from experimenting when I first got it, in SDR I used an OLED brightness of 100 for 2 years, and when I moved I lowered it to 90, and it's been a year and a half. And in the grand scale of things, most of my usage was in SDR. Let me show you an example of a typical stream day. I would set up my game in a 1440p window at the bottom right, Twitch chat at the bottom left, my activity dashboard at the top left, my OBS at the top right, which is the streaming software, and my Twitch dashboard at the top middle. And to the left of that, I would have LiveSpot, which is a timing program used for speedruns. You may have already figured out the source of the burn-in. It's the title bar of the window of the game. Also, for Windows colors, I used gray and dark mode wherever possible. I also used a completely black background and hit the taskbar, although at this point I would never go back, the extra vertical space is too useful. But I did disable the auto dimming in the service menu, known as TPC, which dims the entire screen when the average picture level stays static for a few minutes, and GSR, which dims static elements when it detects them, which is fine for logos on regular TV usage, but for me it was useless, so I got rid of it. This does increase the risk of burn-in, particularly the TPC setting. Also, I never used any sort of snapping program, so all these windows would be at slightly different positions every stream, because I would place them manually, but roughly in their general positions. About a year and 4 months into ownership, Twitch started allowing multi-streaming, so I used the second OBS instance, which I put at the middle left, hidden behind other things. Anyway, pulling my numbers from my own analytics and third-party Twitch tracking websites, I streamed roughly about 6,800 hours. That's a lot of hours with these static elements on screen, besides the game. Now, these are rough numbers, but they should be accurate to about 100 hours or so, at least. Of the 6,800 hours, about 5,300 hours is in this exact configuration as 16:9 1440p window game. Around 300 hours is a 1536p 4:3 window. And about 1,000 hours is in a 16:9 1080p window game. And the rest is some other stuff I'm not bothering to calculate. With these smaller windows, I will put chat next to the window instead of in a corner. Coincidentally, the non-streaming hours also come out to 6,800 hours. Roughly, that is. It seems a big coincidence, but if you think about it, I stream about 6 hours a day, and I use my PC around 11 hours a day on average. And I take about 1 day off a week, so it roughly comes out to 50-50. So what's my off-stream usage like? I don't have any numbers to pull from without analytics and tracking, so I'm pulling some of these out of my ass, not gonna lie. But I'd put around 5,000 hours on watching something on the left while either scrolling Reddit or other websites, or I'd be playing something. In that case, I'd usually have the YouTube window a lot thinner. I'd put around 500 hours on full screen HDR gaming, which sounds a little bit low, but that was enough for like 15 games, I think. And the rest I'd put at random other stuff, like watching stuff in full screen, or on rare occasions sometimes I'd work, either write code or edit videos. So that's the gist of my usage. What do you guys think? I think I used the screen to my heart's content 99% without worrying about burn-in, and I only took minimal precautions. But I know there are plenty of people who will consider the precautions I took as constantly babying the screen, and that they'll consider the burn-in I have to be indicative of not good enough durability even after $13,000. Anyway, if you're someone who's on the fence about buying an OLED, I'd recommend you do so. I put mine through pretty heavy usage, and it looks like it'll be even longer before any burn-in is visible during regular usage. Of course, I'm just a guy, not a tech tuber, and although I have receipts for the hours I streamed, you can check them out at Twitch Tracker for example, I can't exactly prove everything I did. Like the fact that I used an OLED brightness of 100 or 90 for most of my usage. So you might for example look at Monitor's Unboxed test where Tim has way more burn-in than I have at only $5,000. But my own personal theory is that QD OLEDs, especially the first gen ones, kinda suck. Evidenced by the fact that Samsung used firmware updates to nerf the brightness on their first gen TVs. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave them as a comment or ask me live on Twitch if you catch me streaming. But not YouTube chat, I don't read that. Bye bye.